Hello and good morning, everybody watching on LinkedIn Live. We're on YouTube, anybody watching on replay. Welcome to this workshop on how to burnout proof your team. Now, this workshop is designed specifically for anybody that looks after people. So this is for your founders, your HR, wellbeing champions, anyone that looks after a team that wants to help protect them from burnout. This workshop is for you. I will be sending replays and all the downloadables and everything afterwards. So if you are watching on LinkedIn, please can you drop me a DM with your details, with your email address, so I can send it all over. This is the first time I've done this workshop, so I'm flying by the seat of my pants a little bit. And this is the first time I've done a LinkedIn Live and put it on YouTube and all this kind of stuff. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. Welcome. Hopefully I can see all of your comments here, but if I miss any, I will come back and answer any questions at the end. So I'm going to make myself a little bit smaller. Like I said, this workshop is all about how to burnout proof your team. So we're going to be looking at practical strategies that actually work. And what I mean by this are things that we can implement without a lot of time, money, or resources, because I know that they're the three things that most of us are struggling with at the moment, right? We don't have a lot of time. We're not able to perhaps put the budget behind workplace wellbeing that we want to, and we don't necessarily have all of the resources to hand to do that anyway. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. I have set aside an hour time slot for this. Now, I've been a bit cheeky here because I think that this will be a lot less than an hour. But what I really, really want you to do is at the end of this, I'm going to go through some quick wins with these practical strategies. And I would love for you to try and implement something at the end of this. So I've given you a little bit of time to do that. A little bit about me. So I'm Beck Spiller. I founded the Anti-Burnout Club in January 2021. And at the same time, I started providing workplace wellbeing services to businesses. So I've worked with over 10,000 now individuals and employees, NHS, Women's Aid, Macmillan, lots and lots of startups, lots of purpose-led organizations, nonprofits, public sector, loads of people who generally don't have that huge kind of like workplace wellbeing budget or team behind them, and that need a bit of support. I'm also currently building something called the Anti-Burnout Club for employers, so I'll tell you a little bit about that at the end. And I have come back this year from a year off after giving birth to my daughter Evelyn. So she was born in November 2023, and I've taken a year off maternity, and I came just over a year actually. I came back in January this year. So this is the first workshop that I'm actually doing like this. I used to run these pretty much every other month for employers, for teams. And this is my first one for you guys since coming back. So if I'm a bit anxious or I stumble over my words, and I apologize, I'm still using baby brain as an excuse. I think we can use that forever now, right? Like that's just a thing. So if you are watching live, if you fancy it, most people go, no, thank you, especially when I do this on Zoom. Feel free to type in the chat who you are, where you're joining us from, and my favorite question, how stressed have you felt this week? So 1 is totally chill, 10 is seriously overwhelmed. And I tend to get, on a Wednesday, people tend to be veering closer to the 10. But it's a Thursday, so I told you, baby brain. I'm so used to my daughter only doing nursery on Wednesdays and Fridays. She's just started Thursdays this week, so I'm a bit all over the place. Maybe even closer to a 10 then, if it's a Thursday. So feel free to introduce yourself or completely ignore me. That's also fine. While you're doing that, I'll let you know what we're going to cover today. So first of all, I want us to actually understand burnout. There's a lot of misconceptions that burnout is just people being stressed, or, you know, like we work in a high pressure team. Of course, we're going to be stressed. I really want to kind of just really look at what burnout is and why it's so important that we do protect our teams. I'm then going to go through the 6 risk factors. And with this, you'll get a burnout risk factor audit template. Now, I'm not 100% sure how to share it with you guys here. So if you're following this on the YouTube link, then I will post it in the YouTube description. I will also email it out to everyone, and I'll pop it in the LinkedIn comments. It will be everywhere. So don't worry if you don't have a copy of this yet. I will share this everywhere. We're going to look at each of those 6 risk factors and how you would basically fill that risk factor audit in. Then we're going to look at how we can reduce each of those risk factors. And then the most important part, right? I want you to leave with something that you can do right now. So we're going to look at some quick wins that we can focus on this week and this month. And I've just noticed Nick said, Nick, near London, mildly overwhelmed. Nice. I will leave some time for a short Q&A at the end. But like I said, you can use this as implementation time, right? So if you're like, Bex, you've covered everything I need to know, I'm going to go and do something right now for my team or even for myself, amazing. That's great. I won't be offended if everybody drops off in the last 10 minutes. If you don't have any questions, that's fine. You can also email me questions, send me a DM on LinkedIn. I'll put all my contact details at the end. Okay, so let's start with my favorite. What is burnout? Like I said, there's this common misconception that burnout is just stress. And what I tend to get is people coming to me saying, burnout is a part of the job. Like, it's a part of the role that I do. It's a part of the team that I run. No, it's not. Stress might be a part of the job, and that's fine. I've worked in some high pressure environments. I've been in very high pressure situations. I've worked with people who work in like crazy high pressure situations where there's a lot of stress. Burnout is not inevitable. So burnout is this state of chronic physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. And this is when there is no break from stress. Okay. So we're not talking about, I'm building a startup. So of course there's going to be stress. Yeah, of course there is. But how we manage our team stress and how we kind of go forward with our organization's culture is how we deal with preventing burnout. So it's not just about being tired. It's not just about being stressed. It's about being detached, depleted, and unable to recharge, right? There's not a week's holiday that is going to fix burnout. And I say this as someone who has experienced burnout twice. The first time, it took me 4 years to recover, right? So I was 26 years old. My dad had passed away when I was 24 from stress-related heart disease. And I threw myself into the business that I was running at the time, into the agency that I had. And I worked the most insane hours. No amount of rest was going to fix the burnout that I was in. And I didn't get over this burnout for 4 years until I was 30. And then by that point, I realized I had to close my agency down. I'd studied everything that I possibly could about stress, burnout, organizational behavior, economics of well-being, and realized that I was making a lot of mistakes over and over. So burnout is not just, I'm tired, I need a week's holiday. Burnout is shut down. And it was only recently that the World Health Organization actually recognized it, right? So I'm pretty sure this was 2019. Someone might correct me in the comments. But before that, it was kind of like, oh, I don't know, you're just really stressed, right? That doesn't mean it didn't exist before 2019. It's just that we didn't talk about it enough. And there was no real kind of understanding of this chronic stress, what it was doing to our teams and ourselves. So why do I bang this drum so much? I have been talking about burnout non-stop, even during maternity, for a very long time. It has become such an issue that the charity Mental Health UK now publish a yearly burnout report, right? So we've gone from not even talking about this at all to having a yearly report as to the state of the country's burnout, right? And in the one that was released in January 2025, 91% of UK adults reported that they experienced high or extreme levels of pressure or stress in the past year. 91%. That's like nearly all of us, right? And then 21%, so 1 in 5 employees needed to take time off work because of that. So when we put that into perspective, that is a fifth of the UK's workforce having to take time off because of stress. That is a huge amount. And that's just the numbers that are employed. We're not even looking at the number of people who are out of work on long-term sick because of stress. And that's a whole nother workshop that I could do. But there are a lot of people who are struggling, and I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who is here, who is watching this, who genuinely cares about the people that they look after, because this is so important, right? I would not be sitting here giving up my time and you giving up your time, asking for your time, if I didn't truly believe that this is really important, but also really preventable. And then for anybody who likes talking about money, or for anybody that has to convince someone that's got the purse strings, this is the real cost of burnout. So £51 billion is how much it's estimated to cost the UK in poor mental health. So that is losses in productivity, that's sickness, staff turnover, UK economy, £51 billion. Then we kind of break that down into the cost that to do with work-related stress in particular, and it is a massive chunk of that 51 billion, right? It is 28 billion pounds. And then we break it down even further. So if you have to, you're going to come away from this and you have to convince anyone in your organization that we really should be focusing on burnout proofing our team, this is how much it costs on an individual level, right? £1,230 per employee per year, right? Add that up, times that by how many employees you've got. If you've got a calculator in front of you right now, work out how much that's going to cost your organization on a bigger scale. And before we get into the risk factors, because you're all here kind of watching out for your teams, but maybe also for yourselves, something that I talk about a lot and that I do a separate workshop on. If you ever want something for your teams, I can send you this for free. I do the hidden warning signs of burnout as a workshop. These are the things that we need to be looking out for in ourselves and in our teams. So feeling irritable, cynical, or detached, even from things you love, even if you loved your job and now you're feeling very cynical about it. That's something that we see a lot in any caring role. So compassion fatigue is something we see in burnout. Neglecting basic needs, so skipping meals if you're working through lunch breaks, poor sleep, that becomes sort of like a never-ending cycle of not being able to get enough rest. Procrastination or struggling with focus, and this is why it's costing companies so much money, because you might have people in work, you might have people sitting at their desks, but they might be completely struggling with focus, and we call this presenteeism. Feeling like a failure or not good enough, despite all of the achievements that they're perhaps hitting all their targets at work, maybe they feel like they're not good enough and they're not achieving as much as they could be, and they have to keep working, keep hustling. Lack of creativity and passion for any work or hobbies, and physical symptoms. So this is really interesting because the way that I found out that I was burnt out was through my physical symptoms. I was getting every cold. I was coming into the office, picking up a bug, a cold, a flu, or whatever, having to take time off. The minute that I was feeling better, I was back in the office. I was still always on my laptop because I was the kind of pinnacle of presenteeism. And when we are going through extreme periods of chronic stress, it impacts our immune system. So this then makes it a lot easier for us to pick up things like bugs and colds, but it also can impact our rest and digest system. So you might end up with stomach issues, headaches, aches and pains. So these are the things that we need to be aware of in our teams and in ourselves. And the way that we kind of look at whether our teams are at risk of burnout are with these 6 risk factors. So like I said, there is a free risk factors audit that you can complete for your own team. I will share it along with the slides for all of this afterwards, because I've got quite a few checklist things that you can do. I'll share all the slides with you so you can work your way through them. But what I want to do is go through each of these risk factors and then what we do to kind of counteract each risk factor. So I know it says 137 slides down there, and you're probably all thinking, oh my goodness, what time did she say this finishes? But I keep all of my slides in one master thing. So please don't panic. We are not getting through 137 slides. I just thought people were probably like, oh my goodness. So risk factor number 1, workload and job demands. This is the most kind of obvious in your face thing that we see, that is probably talked about the most when it comes to burnout, is high workload, too much overtime, always on culture, and unrealistic or shifting deadlines. So if you work in an organization where this is kind of the norm, then this will be high. You'll get a high score for this. And there are some of you that are probably thinking, there is nothing that I can do about this. Don't worry, we will go through what we can do about each one. Number 2, risk factor, job control and autonomy. So this is probably my favorite kind of area. When I was studying at Warwick Business School, all of my papers that I did were around autonomy in the workplace. It is such an important thing for employees to feel like they have ownership of their role, like they are working towards something that gives them purpose, and that they have a say in the decisions and the way that the company is being run. Now, if you are joining me from, I know there's a lot of you who work in NHS trust or public sector, there are still things that we can do even if you don't have control over this kind of thing, right? The little say in decisions, you might be thinking, I don't have any say in decisions, never mind, my employees. But don't worry, we will go through this. So job control and autonomy is the next risk factor. Number 3, recognition and reward. So if efforts go unnoticed, if there are a few pay rises, promotions or benefits, little or no positive feedback. Now, there is a misconception that to fix burnout, let's just throw money at the problem, right? So we'll just do a load of meditation apps, we'll do some yoga, we'll give some pay rises if we can. That is a sticking plaster. And like I said, as we go through how to kind of deal with each of these risk factors, what I really want to focus on is how we can do this with very little money, time or resources. So again, if you're like, I don't control the purse strings, I'm not going to be able to give anyone pay rises or more benefits than we already do, then there are other ways that we can provide recognition and reward that are perfect for intrinsic motivation, making employees feel valued. Number 4, workplace culture and psychological safety. Oh my goodness. A huge part of how employees feel at work comes from this, the workplace culture and psychological safety. If you are rewarding over work, if people are afraid of speaking up, if there's conflict or toxicity, if there's low trust in leadership or management, it is going to compound into an absolute just boiling pot of burnout. So this, again, I mean, these are all extremely important factors, but really thinking about what can we do to make our employees feel safe and feel like they trust us as an organization, trust me as a people manager, trust me as, a leader. Number 5, wellbeing support and mental health resources. So again, something that perhaps is a misconception that we just need to be throwing loads of resources at people. But one of the things that I see the most, and I mean probably actually the number one thing I see the most, is that workplaces are really good at providing initiatives. Perhaps they've got, apps or things that people can use. And I say this as someone that set up the Anti-Burnout Club, which was originally going to be an app for workplaces to use. They provide these initiatives and they aren't used, right? People aren't given the time to use them, or they're not signposted enough. This is the thing that I probably see the most. And then no stress management training for employees or for managers. So the things like spotting those hidden burnout warning signs. Are your people in management roles, are they aware of what to look for? And then teams struggling to open up. So we want to, and this could also come into culture, we want to create a culture where people feel safe enough to open up about anything that they're struggling with. We see a lot of sick days taken for stress, but we also see a lot of sick days taken for things like colds, flus, that probably actually can be attributed to stress, but people feel too afraid to speak up and say, I'm really struggling. I'm really overwhelmed. And so they'll call up and go, oh, I've got a bit of a tummy ache. That is where, the numbers are almost skewed, and that we probably see a lot more people taking time off for stress than you'd think. Work-life balance and boundaries. So people feel like they can't disconnect. They feel like they can't take breaks or holidays. There was a really interesting thing that I found recently about a big company, and they were employing a head of happiness. I'm not going to mention any names, but I went and looked at their Glassdoor reviews, and someone had said, if we take lunch at our desks, it feels like you're like the worst person on earth, right? Like everyone glares at you. They felt like they couldn't eat even at their desk. Like everybody worked through lunch. I'm not saying like, oh, if we ate lunch at our desk because we should all go out. No, if you even like stop to eat lunch at your desk, you were glared at. So that felt like, oh my goodness, that's a massive risk factor. So feel like they can't take breaks or holidays. And managers, leaders, you guys watching, your leadership team or whoever's in charge, not modeling these boundaries themselves. Okay, so that's the like doom and gloom, and that's basically the 6 sections that you'll go through on the risk factor audit. What's really important in this workshop is what we can do to reduce each risk factor with limited time, money, and resources, because I know from the people that I've worked with over the last 4 and a bit years, that is the biggest stumbling block, right? You're like, yeah, Bex, I know all of these things. I know our team is struggling, but I don't know what to do when I don't have thousands of pounds in the bank to be able to try and fix that. Now, I don't think that we need thousands of pounds in the bank or huge workplace wellbeing teams to be able to fix it. And so I'm going to go through some actionable things for each. And then I'm going to go through some quick wins that you can basically do this week and this month. Now, you can screenshot these, but I'll also send the slides over. So just as a reminder, if you're watching on LinkedIn Live, because I'm not 100% sure how it works, this is the first one I've done, please do send me a message with your email address, because I will send it over. If you're watching and you've come from Eventbrite and you've already provided your email address, it will get sent over automatically. If you are watching on YouTube, I will put a link in the description. So that's it. So risk factor number 1, workload and job demands. This is basically about being really, just really aware of what's on everyone's plate. So whether that's your responsibility or a manager's responsibility, this might be something that you have to delegate to someone else. But I want you to think about what is on everybody's plate, what is essential, what is urgent, and what can we do to stop this kind of culture of overwork. So that might be building buffer time into deadlines. It might be adding short breaks into busy shifts. This is particularly helpful if you're not in an office-based environment, for example, and you've got shift workers, perhaps in the NHS, trying to get in those short breaks, 5 minutes, into the busy shifts is really, really important. Rotating intense tasks. So if, for example, one person focuses specifically on a physically or an emotionally intense task, can you swap it so that next week someone else does it? This is an interesting one. Again, if you are working in a role where you can't really add in those short breaks, or you can't really take away the intensity of a task, can you rotate it instead? Use a shared space to flag when people are stretched. So you can use a whiteboard, you can use a Google Doc, basically writing down everything that people are doing and marking when people are feeling stretched. And I've got a template that you can use for this as well. So thinking about where are the highest loads, where are people struggling with the highest loads, and how can we build in some buffer time around that? Another thing that I really like to do is, if you are, for example, in an office-based environment, or if you do a normal 9 to 5, blocking out for everybody in the company a time with no meetings, right? And this could be half an hour, it could be an hour, it could be 2 hours, whatever works for you, but having a specific time in the organization that is 0 meetings, because meetings does something horrible to all of our brains. And it's like opening a tab and then closing a tab and then opening a tab and closing a tab, and it just is overwhelming. So if we can have deep focus time, that has a real positive impact on our perception of workload, right? Because we're not having to start and stop and get distracted. Number 2, control and autonomy. So letting people have a say in how they do their work is so important if you are able to. So this might be, where they do their work, what time they do their work, offering real flexibility. So when I used to run my agency, I said to people, you can work wherever you want, whenever you want, as long as the work is done. And it didn't really matter to me if people showed up in an office, because the work was being done to the standard that it needed to be done on time. And yes, we had times where we all got together, because I think connection is also really important. But this was back sort of pre-pandemic. So there are ways of doing it where you can still have that connection, you can still have that company culture, but making it truly flexible. And I know anyone that doesn't have a choice in this will be like, oh, this is so frustrating. I wish that we could do this in our organization. There are still things that you can do. So you can ask your staff for input on their shift patterns, task order, break times. Give them more say in how their day is structured. So again, really thinking about, if working in public sector, anything like that, where perhaps you don't have the option to be flexible, really giving people a say in what their day looks like and how that is structured. And you can use team huddles to gather ideas on this. So really getting people's knowledge and insight about how they work well, what that looks like for them, and involving them in in all of those decisions, particularly in small decisions that affect them. You don't need to involve them in every single massive decision in the organization. But if we can lay off the kind of micromanaging, trust that people are going to do their job well, this has a hugely positive impact on people's autonomy, on their well-being. Recognition and reward, again, without needing a lot of money. Yes, pay rises. No one's going to say no to a pay rise. No one's going to say no to extra benefits. People want to see money in their bank account at the end of the day. But it might be that you are in a position where that's not down to you. And what can you do to promote more recognition and reward? Say thank you. It really is as simple as celebrating the little wins, making space to appreciate people, giving shout outs. So I love seeing this in the NHS, giving shout outs during shift handovers. Such and such did an amazing job this shift. That's it. It makes people feel empowered. It makes people feel valued. It doesn't have to be a giant kind of load of money spent and away day, all of that kind of stuff. You can do something as simple as a staff notice board where people thank each other, and if you're not all in the office together, that might be a virtual notice board. It might be a Slack channel. I would highly encourage you, if you can, do some kind of physical appreciation if you're not all working together. So if you are completely flexible or hybrid and you're not in an office together, I highly recommend sending out cards or something like that people get to their home that gives them a physical bit of appreciation that maybe would cost you a couple of quid to go buy the cards, and that's it. And another really important one that I kind of skipped over there is be clear about how people can grow or progress, because recognition and reward isn't just necessarily about you're doing an amazing job. It's also about how can I keep doing an amazing job? How can I grow and learn? Which as human beings, we're always striving for. Okay, workplace culture and psychological safety. So this really is about creating a safe space. And this starts with how you show up and how the leadership teams show up. So this is a conversation to have perhaps with any managers that you have, any other leaders in the organization. How can we show our human side as a leader? People will always follow your lead. So the minute that you open up, you create that safe space, right? So back when I was running my agency, it was really important to me that my team knew that I'd really struggled with anxiety all of my life. And then when I was going through burnout, that I was really struggling with that. It then created a space where team members could come to me and say, I'm really anxious, like I'm really, really struggling today. And I could say, I get it, do what you need to do. Another really important thing is to stop celebrating overworking. We see it so much, and it's almost ingrained in us, right? Just like you say, oh, well done for working so hard. All we're doing is celebrating the overwork, celebrating the road to burnout. So how can we kind of change the narrative a little bit? How can we celebrate the people that set good boundaries, the people who don't model kind of hustle culture and burnout culture? Make inclusion part of daily work. So really, we're talking about DE and I here. Don't just make it, an awareness day or a training day. Make it a real inclusive part of work. And again, thinking about people who perhaps work in different situations. So post-shift check-ins to catch any small issues early. Provide anonymous ways to raise feedback. This is something I run surveys a lot for organizations, because employees feel like they can't open up unless it's anonymous, but they also feel like, even when the company's running it, even when they say it's anonymous, are they going to work out that it's me? So a lot of people ask me to come in and do anonymous ways for them to raise feedback, so that I can kind of condense that and say to the employer, look, this is what's going wrong, without them going, was that Susie? I think that was Susie that wrote that. You get this all the time. Yeah, I think that really reads like Susie. So providing real anonymous ways to raise feedback, you'll get a lot more actual good feedback that you can work with. Wellbeing support and mental health resources. So when I was running the Anti-Burnout Club as an app and a platform for employers to use, we were constantly monitoring engagement, right? And what I noticed was that when a new initiative was brought in, an employer would send an email out and say, we're doing this now. We've got Headspace as a meditation app. And then that was it, right? So they just expected everybody to download it, everybody to use it. And then they would come back to me and they'd say, I don't think anyone's using this. Like engagement's like 10, 20%. I say, well, how often are you reminding them? How often are you signposting them, to the things that are available? Oh, well, we told them it was available. And maybe it comes up in a meeting every now and then. We need to be constantly communicating to our teams what is available, where it is, how they access it, when they should access it. If you have a communications team or a communications person, making sure that they know this needs to be going out pretty much with every bit of communication. Training your managers to spot and support someone who's struggling. So going back to that kind of initial thing that I did on the hidden signs of burnout, training your managers to be able to spot those in people. Instead of going, God, Susie, I don't know who Susie is, she seems to be taking the brunt of this today. Susie's taking loads of time off. I'm so sick of it. Was there anything leading up to that? Is she being overworked? Making sure that the right support is there for your management team so that they can support anyone who's struggling. Ask the team what they'll actually use. Please, please, please. I've got a survey template you can use. Just ask them what they'll use, because a lot of people don't want to meditate. A lot of people don't want yoga. A lot of people aren't bothered about free fruit, in a bowl on the desk. Like, ask them what they need. And this comes from creating a culture where we can talk openly about stress and rest and make that normal. So making sure that you've kind of created that culture and then say to them, cool, so what do you think would be good for you? You can use a wellness action plan. Again, I've got a template for that. I'm basically going to bombard you with templates after this now that I'm thinking about it. Putting support posters or info in break rooms if you have a physical office space. I see this on the back of toilet doors in the NHS, everywhere. Having go-to people for wellbeing in each team, lots of wellbeing champions, that kind of stuff if you can. And the Anti-Burnout Club resources, which we're having a shift around with what that looks like at the moment. But if you would like to use our free resources for your teams, let me know. And when it's all kind of ready, I can send that over for you as well. Okay, risk factor number 6. You're doing amazing, guys. We're getting there. Work-life balance and boundaries. So this really is, I should have put this second one at the top. Encouraging your leadership team to model boundaries. That comes from you, comes from anyone in the leadership team. Encouraging them to model boundaries, which means no out-of-hours messages, taking proper breaks, and taking holiday. And that will trickle down to your team. So being really clear that people aren't expected to reply out of hours, encouraging all of the breaks, encouraging people to take their holiday, giving recovery time if you're shift working, particularly between intense shifts, and reward those healthy boundaries. So obviously we spoke about at the moment, people may reward overwork. Let's reward healthy boundaries instead of overwork. Okay, here are your quick wins. Here are your bits to screenshot if you want to go ahead and do this straight away. So quick wins for this week. I'll then leave a little bit of space for Q&A, but anyone that wants to go and do some of these quick wins, we've got quick wins for this week and this month. So cancel or reschedule one non-essential meeting. Do a mini team check-in. Are we currently over capacity? What can we do about it? Let your team decide how to approach one upcoming task. Start your meeting, your next meeting, with 3 positive shout-outs. Leave 1 handwritten note or digital thank you. Share something human about your own day or week. Share a mental health support resource clearly, very clearly. Praise someone for logging off on time. Set up a simple how are we doing traffic light check. And complete your burnout risk factors audit, which, like I said, I will send at the end. So the burnout risk factors audit should maybe take you 20 minutes, half hour to go through. And then that will give you a plan to go forward. Okay, this month, set a 15-minute weekly what's not working session. So getting the truth from your team. Launch a monthly recognition moment. Review 1 team norm that might be contributing to stress that's come perhaps from that burnout risk audit. Co-create a team values in action list together. This is a really nice way of making sure that everyone's on the same page and that everyone feels like they have a purpose in the organization and that it's driven by value. Run a mini what wellbeing support would actually help survey. Ask managers to reflect on their role in supporting wellbeing and do they feel supported to support wellbeing. Trial a no meeting morning or quiet hour every week. Track annual leave usage and encourage time off for the people that haven't taken time off. Now, it might be that actually as we're coming into April, all of your hours, all of the holiday hours are being reset. If that's the case, go back to last year, have a look who wasn't taking their time off, encourage them to take time off this year. Set up peer supporters or wellbeing champions And you can also come and talk to me about your burnout risk audits result. So if you do your burnout risk audits result, there's a little link in there for a 30-minute free consultation. It's not a sales call. It's just for you to come and talk to me about what you found and if there's anything that I can recommend for you to focus on from those results. Now, I promised that I would let you know about the Anti-Burnout Club for employers. The pilot is launching on the 5th of May. So very quickly, I will go through this and then I will leave some space for questions. So the key thing that I see that employers struggle with is not having the right resources or not having the time or money to put the right resources together. So what I'm building is a platform where employers can basically get all of the resources they need, and that could be templates, playbooks, done for you challenges like initiatives for example, Mental Health Awareness Month, all designed to boost morale, productivity, and well-being based on all of the work that I've done with 10,000 plus people so far. And then we'll do monthly masterclasses just like this one. So burnout prevention, we would do something like this. Quiet quitting, resilience. You get to vote on which topics are most valuable to you, and then we do those. And also office hours. So obviously consulting is expensive and time consuming for those that don't have the budget all the time. So each month I'll run dedicated office hours where you can ask questions, and that's all included within that. So the pilot starts on the 5th of May. I've put 3 spots left. Someone emailed me just before I started this, so I've got 2 spots left. We're doing a very, very, very small pilot, so I can see how it works, and then I can open it up to everyone. So if you do want to join that, please do let me know. And if you're watching this and it's after the 5th of May, let me know anyway, because I may honour the discount. Depends how nice I'm feeling. Okay, key points to remember. Burnout isn't personal, it's structural. Not focusing on burnout prevention is expensive. Completing this burnout risk factors audit every few months can help you keep on top of it. And you don't need a big budget to make a big difference. So the small intentional changes that we've gone through really do add up. You might be thinking, Bex, I don't know what doing any of this is going to change. Please do the burnout risk factors audit, run a survey with your team, pick a couple of things. Every workplace has risk factors. Focus on a small amount of the ones that you can control right now and run it again in 3 months' time, right? And keep doing this, rinse and repeat. This is free, ongoing workplace well-being support. Basically, you are creating a culture that feels safe, that is burnout proof. And if you would like any extra support at all with your audit, with resources, any of the stuff that I've mentioned, please do reach out to me, and I will send over everything that I have for you that you can use. And that is it. It is time for any questions that you may have. If you don't have any questions or you don't fancy hanging around, you can go and implement one of those things right away. And what I'll do while I'm waiting for questions is I will leave my contact details up here. So if you want to get in touch, if there's anything that I've mentioned that you want to talk about, for example, if you want to try the pilot of the Anti-Burnout Club for employers, or if you want any of the resources that I've spoken about, if you'd like your team to use the free Anti-Burnout Club resources when they're ready, please do drop me an email. And that is it. It has been an absolute pleasure to spend my Thursday, I've remembered now, Thursday morning with you. I will wait a couple of minutes for questions, but if there isn't any, then like I said, please do use this time to implement something that you have learned today, and get in touch if you want any other support, any other resources. I will send you an email in the next sort of half an hour with the recording of this, the slides, and all of the resources that I've mentioned. So the survey templates and all of that kind of stuff, the burnout risk factor audit. And if you're watching on LinkedIn Live or you're watching back, please do send me a message with your email address so I can get those sent over to you. I think that's it. I don't think we've got any questions, which is good. That means I've done my job. Thank you so much again. Good luck. Please do reach out if you need anything, and I will see you all again very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.